The CEO moved through the early morning crowd of the city like a shadow slipping between beams of light. His tailored suits and polished shoes were gone today. Instead, he wore an old gray hoodie, faded jeans, and sneakers worn along the edges. The disguise wasn't elaborate, but it was enough. People rarely looked twice at someone who seemed to be in a hurry and minding their own business. Elias Hartwell, known to his board as strategic, precise, and unshakably calm, had been anything but calm for the past 3 weeks. His company's Midtown retail branch, once one of the strongest performers in the region, had begun spiraling downward with no clear explanation. Reports were vague, numbers were declining, customer reviews had grown strangely inconsistent, ranging from glowing praise to complaints tinged with discomfort. And the store's manager, Davis Crane, insisted everything was fine. Market fluctuations, Davis had said in their last meeting, shrugging with forced confidence. Seasonal dips, staff laziness, we're handling it, but Elias didn't believe him. Something in Davis's tone had been just a little too dismissive, his explanations too rehearsed. Elias had built his company from a small warehouse into a national chain by trusting numbers, but also by trusting instincts. And right now, his instincts told him something was wrong. Very wrong. So, before dawn broke fully across the skyscrapers, Elias decided to go see it himself. No entourage, no announcement, no corporate authority hovering around him. Just a man blending into the flow of foot traffic. When he reached the storefront, he paused just outside the automatic doors. The glass panels reflected a version of himself he hardly recognized, hood pulled low, shoulders slumped like any exhausted commuter. He slipped in quietly as the first wave of customers filtered through. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of fresh produce and floor cleaner. Shelves gleamed under rows of bright LED lights. At a glance, everything looked orderly. A few employees moved about, restocking items, straightening displays. None of them paid him any attention. Good. His eyes scanned every aisle with the subtlety of a seasoned inspector. He noticed little things first. End caps poorly stocked, sales tags left crooked, a few empty spaces that should have been filled. Nothing major individually, but collectively, they felt like symptoms of a deeper neglect. He moved through the store slowly, pretending to browse. In the bakery section, he watched a customer ask an employee where to find an item. The employee hesitated, glanced nervously toward the back office window, and then answered in a hurried whisper. Elias frowned. Employees shouldn't be scared simply to answer questions. His attention shifted when he heard a soft voice at the front registers. Welcome in, if you need anything, just let me know. He turned slightly and saw her. The cashier he would later learn was named Lila. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair pulled back into a neat bun. Her posture was straight, but there was a weary droop at the edges of her expression. Her uniform apron was spotless, though a small frayed seam on one strap hinted at someone who cared enough to keep using it long after it should have been replaced. Elias watched her for a moment. She smiled at each customer, even laughed once or twice, but the smile never fully reached her eyes. There was something fragile underlying her politeness, as if she were carrying a weight she had learned not to show. He continued moving through the aisles, occasionally glancing back toward her station. Each time, she seemed just a little more anxious, sneaking glances toward the office window at the back of the store. Elias followed her line of sight. The manager's office. The blinds were half drawn, but he could make out the silhouette of Davis Crane, arms folded across his chest as he watched the floor, not helping, not assisting, just watching. A supervisor observing his team wasn't unusual, but Davis's stance wasn't one of leadership. It was one of control. Supervision mixed with intimidation. Elias felt a flicker of anger, but he forced it down. He needed to observe, not react. He moved toward the home goods aisle, pretending to examine some kitchen utensils. Two employees whispered near the end of the row, voices hushed and tense. He changed the schedule again. One murmured, "I can't even pick up my kid on time this week. I tried asking for a swap and he threatened to cut my hours," the other whispered. "I don't know how long I can keep this up." Their conversation died immediately when another employee walked by. Both forced smiles and dispersed. Elias exhaled slowly. This wasn't normal. This wasn't the culture he had built. His stores were known for employee support, growth opportunities, and community feel. Not fear. He shook his head, fighting back disappointment. This store, the one he had been proud of, the one customers used to rave about, felt suffocated. He circled back toward the front. Customers lined up at Lila's register now, and she moved efficiently despite her trembling hands. When it was finally his turn, she greeted him with a polite, "Good morning," though her voice quivered. He placed a few random items on the counter: bread, soap, a notebook, things to make him look like any ordinary shopper. As she scanned the items, her hand slipped, and the notebook fell to the floor. Sorry," she whispered, bending to retrieve it. "It's all right," Elias said gently. She nodded, blinking quickly, but her eyes glistened. She wiped at her cheek discreetly, pretending to brush a stray hair away. But Elias saw it clearly, a tear. Fresh, unbidden. Her voice tightened as she continued bagging his items. "Thank you for your patience. It's just, I'm a little tired today." He watched her carefully. "Tough shift." She hesitated, eyes lowering for a fraction of a second, too long for simple fatigue. Behind her, Elias noticed Davis standing at the edge of the office, arms crossed, staring at her with an expression that made Elias's jaw tighten. It wasn't concern. It wasn't managerial attentiveness. It was monitoring. Pressure. Silent warning. Lila swallowed, her hands trembling worse now. "Sorry," she whispered again, though she had done nothing wrong. Elias felt something twist sharply inside him, not as a CEO, but as a human being watching someone suffer in silence. When she handed him his receipt, she glanced up. For the first time, her smile completely broke, and a thin tear slid down her cheek, catching the light before she quickly wiped it away. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, keeping his tone neutral, unthreatening. She opened her mouth, closed it again, and whispered, "I'm fine. Just, sorry." The apology hit him like a blow. People didn't apologize for nothing unless they were afraid. And Elias Hartwell suddenly knew, whatever the reports had missed, whatever excuses Davis had fed him, the truth of this store lived in that cashier's trembling hands. And he was going to find out why. Elias left the store that morning with the weight of Lila's quiet suffering pressing heavily on his thoughts. Her trembling hands, her carefully masked fear, the way her apology sounded more like a reflex than a choice, all of it painted a picture he could no longer ignore. Something corrosive had taken root in his store, something that had turned a place meant to support livelihoods into a space of dread. And Davis Crane stood at the center of it. He returned to headquarters without revealing what he had seen or where he had been. He spent the remainder of the day combing through months of reports, text logs, security footage excerpts, and staffing histories. The deeper he dug, the more inconsistencies he uncovered. Schedules manipulated to punish certain employees. Customer complaints mysteriously edited or removed. Camera angles conveniently obscured during certain interactions. Even the financial reports suggested cash shortages that had been attributed to employee carelessness. Elias had built his company on transparency and employee-first principles. Seeing those principles twisted sickened him. By the time sunset bled across the city skyline, he knew exactly what needed to be done. When he returned to the store that evening, this time dressed sharply and without disguise, the shift had changed. The store was quieter, the aisles dimmer, the air heavier. Employees noticed him immediately, straightening hurriedly, murmuring to each other. Elias did not linger. He walked directly toward the manager's office, each step echoing with steady purpose. Davis Crane looked up as the office door swung open. His lazy, confident posture crumbled in an instant. "Mr. Hartwell," he stammered, standing so fast his chair rolled back. I didn't know you were coming." "That was the point," Elias answered evenly. "Sit." Davis obeyed. His palms were already sweating. Elias closed the door behind him with calm deliberation. "We need to discuss the condition of this store." Davis swallowed. "Of course. I've been meaning to reach out. Actually, there have been some challenges recently, but I'm handling." "You're not handling anything," Elias cut in. His tone remained controlled, but the cold clarity of it made Davis's words die instantly. "You've created an environment of fear. You've mistreated staff, manipulated schedules, and falsified performance narratives." Davis blanched. "Sir, I assure you. I observed it myself," Elias said. "And I spoke to customers. I reviewed files. I saw enough in a single morning to understand exactly what has been happening here." Davis's mouth opened and closed like he couldn't decide whether to defend himself or plead. "Look, these employees, some of them are lazy, unmotivated, someone has to keep them in line." "Keeping them in line does not involve intimidation," Elias replied sharply. "Nor does it involve taking employee tips, or cutting breaks, or threatening livelihoods." Davis flinched. They're exaggerating. The numbers aren't, Elias said. And neither are the cameras. Or the logs. Silence fell. A long, suffocating silence in which Davis realized there was no escape. Elias gave him one final look, level, controlled, irreversible, before delivering the words that ended Davis's tenure. You are relieved of your position effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You will not return. Davis sagged back into his chair, defeated beyond repair. He knew better than to argue. Within minutes, store security arrived to escort him out, leaving the office, and the store, eerily quiet in the aftermath. Elias exhaled once, deeply, then turned toward the intercom button. He hesitated. Calling an emergency staff meeting right now might overwhelm the employees. Instead, he stepped out into the store floor. Several workers stood frozen, watching the commotion at a distance. Some looked hopeful, some looked tense, a few looked downright terrified. Elias offered a single nod, indicating they could return to their tasks. He didn't want the focus to be on him. Not yet. He found Lila near aisle 3, restocking shelf labels with careful precision. She stiffened when she sensed someone approaching, turning with an expression that flickered from polite to startled the moment she recognized him from the security badge clipped to his pocket. Why she stopped, unable to find the words. Elias Hartwell, he finished gently. I'd like to speak with you for a moment. Her breath caught. She nodded quickly, wiping her hands on her apron as though preparing to be reprimanded. He motioned toward a quieter corner of the store, beside a small seating area near the floral section. Lila walked with careful, hesitant steps, as if expecting that every footfall might trigger some consequence. When they reached the corner, Elias spoke with deliberate calm. I want you to know you're not in trouble. She stared at him, eyes wide with disbelief. I'm not, no, he said firmly. But I need you to help me understand what's been happening here. Only if you're comfortable. Lila swallowed hard. For a moment, it seemed she might deny everything, defaulting back to the practiced silence of someone who had been punished for speaking up. But then she looked at him, really looked, and whatever she saw in his eyes gave her the courage to let the truth surface. It's been bad, she whispered. Really bad. Davis, he's been taking our tips. Telling us breaks are privileges, not rights. If we're sick, he threatens to dock ours. If a customer complains, even if it's not our fault, he writes us up. Her voice wavered. Some days, he stands behind the registers just watching. Not helping. Just waiting for us to mess up. Elias felt a slow burning anger coil deep in his chest. Why didn't anyone report him? We tried, Lila said. But complaints kept disappearing. Every time we asked upper management about them, they said no concerns had been submitted. Then we'd get fewer hours or worse shifts. Eventually, people just stopped trying. He nodded. It aligned with everything he had suspected, and much more than he'd hoped wasn't true. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You should never have had to work under conditions like that. Effective immediately, Davis Crane is no longer part of this company. Lila's breath hitched. She blinked, stunned. He's gone. Yes, Elias confirmed. And changes start now. The tears came suddenly, soft, shaky, but unmistakably different from the ones she'd shed that morning. These weren't born of fear. They were born of release. I thought things would never get better, she murmured, wiping her cheeks quickly. We all did. They will, Elias said. Tomorrow morning, I'll meet with the entire team. Every concern will be addressed. Schedules will be reviewed. Break policies will be enforced properly. And no one, absolutely no one, will be retaliated against for speaking honestly. Lila nodded, still processing everything. Thank you, she whispered. Really? Elias paused, then added, and Lila, your composure today, even while facing all of this, says more about your character than anything in your personnel file. This store needs people like you. And I intend to make sure you're supported going forward. For the first time, her smile was genuine, small, soft, carrying the fragile glow of renewed hope. Thank you, sir, she said again, her voice steadier now. As Elias walked away, he looked around the store with new purpose. It no longer felt like a failing branch. It felt like a place ready to heal. And as he stepped toward the exit, he understood something essential. Sometimes the most revealing truths weren't in reports or numbers. Sometimes they shone through the tears of a single cashier, brave enough to show what everyone else had learned to hide. And because of that, everything was about to change.